Hey guys, Mike here. So, oh boy, what an interesting day in the market with one index holding on to green and the rest of them dumping. And we got a lot to cover in this video, especially small caps, man, broke a huge demand zone. It's held up for like 5 years. I mean, that's how bad this market is. The transportations we'll look at are just a waterfall, right? And we talked about this Monday when I was talking about the Dow theory and how bear market's being affirmed according to the Dow theory. And like I said, if some people think it's outdated, maybe it is. But right now it's kind of playing out that way. But the one thing I'm a firm believer on here, and I think it's my duty on this channel, is I don't believe in camps. So I'm not a bear, I'm not a bull, I'm just in the market, right? And I'm looking at technicals and I'm looking at the macro, everything. And so I don't get too high, I don't get too low, I don't get all freaked out, and I don't get all ooh when things are going great too. You just kind of keep it even keel, and I believe in always assessing the situation. That might be a marine thing, but I always believe in that. And what I'm going to show you, I'm going to assess the situation for you today. But you got to understand, one, you should never forget this period for the rest of your life. If any of us ever forget this period from 2020 to now, or however long it goes on for, until if things ever do get back to normal, which they usually do, right? I don't know what to say if you forget this, but yeah, and there's a lot to learn from it, right? And so October shows you October 1st, most volatile month of the year, because this is when crazy things happen for some odd reason. October's weird like that, maybe because it's Halloween, I don't know. And so what's the two things that happened this month? Well, first one is the first time in history of our country that I can think of where people paused to buy our debt. They're like, oof, right? 30-year bond auction didn't go very well, and the yields had to go up to get them to actually buy it. People paused. That's the first time it's really ever happened. They're like, oof. And now with every bond auction, everybody's going, how'd that go? Ooh, at 20 years, it was okay. 5-year, And so, like I said, I've never watched bond auctions. I never even looked into them. I never even thought about them. I'm sure you hadn't either. Now all of a sudden, bond auctions are a thing. Really? And then the other one is the Middle East, right? I don't talk about that subject. I've been asked that, and I'll answer it right now because I'm just a firm believer. If you're ignorant on something, I'm not Jewish or Palestinian. I've never been there, nothing. And so I'm ignorant on the subject, right? I'm confused about the stuff. And so I'm not going to come on this platform and talk about it. I'll talk about my personal life and I ask questions, but, I don't, I'm just not going to talk about that because I don't know what I'm talking about. So, and as far as how it affects the markets, the reason why it's affecting the markets, if it is because people are worried about a certain country and oil, they're also, all of a sudden, these countries are all sending troops and warships and everything else you're hearing all over the news. And so that's freaking people out, right? And so that's the two things I can think of off the top of my head that's happened in October that the market's like, okay, and like I said, if it wants to use an excuse to sell it down, it will, right? And it's tough for the stock market to make a real move, a definitive solid move, until the bond market kind of stabilizes, right? Now, is that going to happen? We don't know. Remember, we got the Fed next week. We also got the Treasury is going to come out and talk about issuance. That's very important. Now, I do want to make a quick apology to this young man because I actually thought this was a kid. Honest mistake, but then you guys in the comments corrected me. Several of you happen to know this person or have seen him on YouTube, I guess, with Mike Tyson and some MMA fighters and things like that. And I guess he has a rare growth hormone issue. And so I guess he's either 21, 30, or 40, according to you guys, but he is a grown man. So I apologize. I would never take a shot at somebody if I knew better, but it was an honest mistake. So thank you for that. But I always like to make amends or whatever. So sorry about that. Now, getting into the market, what we talked about, right? And kind of doing an autopsy and where we're at and where we're going, that kind of stuff, right? This is the Dow Jones Transportation. It's a hot mess. That's a waterfall. That's what that is. So obviously transportation is the backbone. Maybe this doesn't mean anything anymore like it used to or whatever. Normally it goes down and precedes any recessions. Again, if you pull up any recession, you pull up this one right here, you'll see that for yourself. But again, some people said, it doesn't mean that much anymore. And again, maybe it doesn't. But I will say this. when you pull out and say, okay, where's the next support at? If it's going to bounce, which you would think at some point in time it is, maybe right down there is where it's at. If it keeps falling, you can see it's thin down there. So, usually this is what they call the canary in the coal mine. Doesn't mean it's going to play out now. Again, because you saw the economic data. It wasn't bad at all today when it came out this morning. Now looking at the S&P here, again, what do you got? You got bullish divergence on your RSI playing out right now in the S&P. Doesn't mean, let me scoot this over so you can actually see it. Doesn't mean it's got to bounce now. Doesn't mean it's going to bounce, right? But it's not like it's a bad thing. And when you look at this, because we're in a downtrend, right? So when you look at this right here, when you go back, it's important to note that, because like when you look for other instances and stuff, I mean, here was another instance right here. But when you look, guess what that was? That was the October 2022 low, right? We ended up having bullish divergence. And then, of course, we went on a huge run and everything. So it doesn't always play out. But the fact, the RSI may be trying to say, hey, let's see if we can move up here and stop the bleeding. And, that could be the case. Could also be the case because we're just sitting at, crazy support levels and all this good stuff. But also, remember this head and shoulders we talked about like forever and a day, and there's the neckline and everything? Well, it's pretty much played out. I mean, not exactly. I don't expect these things to play out to the penny or anything. But if you look, I mean, anywhere from a little over 5% right there, and you can see down here we've dropped right around about 5%. So, I mean, and again, we're sitting on that trend line right there, which is the 2020 crash and low. Which also we've seen bounces from the 2022 crash, the March this year move down. And so we'll see if we're going to get a bounce off that line or not. And there is support there. And make sure you look over to the left because we're right at the high. I think you can look to the left a little bit there. And you can see we're right at that high, and you don't want to break that high. If we break that trend line, I think we're definitely going down farther, right? And this trend line right here will now be resistance, of course, if it does decide to bounce. But, again, just some things adding up there, right? And then we move over here, and, we can look as far as like, the Fibonacci levels. Not quite if you look at the whole move up from October. The 50s right below that high I was talking about just a minute ago. That's the high I was talking about we're at right now. And in the 50s right below that, that would be 50% of the retracement. Could play out, but you can see, that's a key level, man, which we got down today, and especially on the SPY, we were sending Discord just begging not to break 210, and what happened? And before we continue, guys, please hit that like button there at the bottom. Give it a thumbs up. Helps people find the video. And if you like this kind of content, think about subscribing. I appreciate all you guys' support. We actually went below to 209.47, I believe it was. And then in the last 15 minutes, pushed up and closed above 210. That's a key psychological level for sure. And so, you just got to keep that in mind. And then when you go up to the NASDAQ composite, I mean, you can see, you got this where it's basically a double bottom, obviously still bearish up here. And then what's crazy, though, is you pull up here, and there's actually a bull flag that has formed, right? Now, will this bounce? Will that be the target? Who knows? I just saw this day, and again, my job is to present it to you. We'll see if that's the case. We are hitting, oversold down there. And so we'll see if we finally get the bounce coming in next week. I think a lot of stuff is just setting up for next week to see what happens with the Treasury, with FOMC, things of that nature. This is the NASDAQ 100. It's also this is what the QQQ tracks right here. So it's setting up for that as well. Then you got Tesla. Look, Tesla, we've talked about it. I want to thank somebody who's a viewer who said, hey, pull up basically year to date of the low anchored VWAP, right? And you can see that's 2 days in a row. It's rejected off of that. So that is providing some resistance right now. Again, these two lines that I got marked out, you see in higher lows, okay, on the shorter term time frames here on the hourly. That 202 to 212 area, right? That's definitely a place. I told you, it's the war zone right now. It continues to hold it right now. And like I've said before, if it falls below that right there, it's like 185 is definitely in the cards if we break 200. But, looking at Tesla, again, we know how it moves. And again, we're still in a downward trending channel right here on Tesla. That is a lower and low to the right. It's lower than the middle one, lower than here. So we're still in that channel. So bears are still in control, holding this down, trying to push it down. And so we'll see, if that's going to be the case or not. I think, again, a lot of this is just going to have to do with next week. I mean, does the market finally make a turn, or does it want more, blood in the streets? That's really what we got to be looking for here. Now, some news that came out, some people say this is bullish. I say it is not. But, Ford postponed about $12 billion in EV investments as buyers become more cautious. Sure, I just never seen Ford as a big competitor anyway to Tesla. But if it's because of demand overall, which even Elon Musk has warned about, then no, it's not bullish for Tesla. Okay, if that's what it's for, it's not. But now Amazon, huge day, right? It's up almost 10% at one point in time today after earnings yesterday. Big gap up. And so just imagine if Tesla wasn't up, Intel wasn't up 10%, which pulled the semiconductors up, which we'll get into in a minute. Just imagine where this market would have actually went today, because it was definitely the Mag 7 holding the market up for sure. We pull up the moving average, you can see there's that 200. Again, we'll pull up all the good stuff here to see supports and everything else. and it bounced like literally where it was sitting at, was sitting on support, got right up there, and there's the resistance right there around 129, 130 is real resistance for Amazon. So we'll see if it can bust through that. And you can see the 200 down there, obviously the gap below. So if weakness continues next week, even though this does have momentum behind it, it does leave that big gap right there. If it starts to sell off, obviously it'd be nice to fill that gap. But let me pull up. I'm gonna pull up the rest of the moving averages. I'm just curious to see where the 50 and the 100 are. And you can see, right now still they're pointing down, right? So those are going to be sitting right at that gap, and so those will be resistance as well. And so a lot of resistance between 29, 134, right in there somewhere. And so, if it continues momentum, I think obviously this could go much higher. But I will say, when it comes to NVIDIA, and I'm going to talk about NVIDIA more tomorrow, but I showed you this Wyckoff, right? And you can just see, it looks pretty good. Like it's playing out, right? And so if that is the D area over there, if that's what that is, then you end up moving. And I'll show you something pretty cool tomorrow. What this is in tomorrow's video. But it's not that people say NVIDIA is expensive. You compare this forward PE to a lot of the other Magnificent Seven, not really compared to them, but it's more to do with the move up. The move up was just crazy. You rarely see them move up that fast in that many stocks, and it just took a gigantic move up. And so you're seeing what's happening to these Mag 7 on earnings, right? Even Microsoft had good earnings, but it ended up getting pretty much pulverized, right? Or selling off, giving back all its gains and stuff right away, and Meta gave back its gains, and just any little thing that doesn't come to fruition. So the bar is just setting higher. And again, I'll talk about this more tomorrow. The one positive thing today was, remember, Intel pulled this up, right? Because Intel, not this one, but AMD, right? The one positive for AMD was it was up like 3%. Even when NVIDIA went red, AMD was up 2 to 3%. And so it didn't follow AMD today, which is good. It needs a disconnect if it's going to have any chance at all. But you can see, it's basically back down this falling wedge right here. All the moving averages, the 150 are turning over, the 200 is right above it. And so it has, and it's basically holding right at support right now. But if we zoom out on this one, obviously, like we said, if it breaks that, then it's going to head down the bottom of that falling wedge right there, and that'll be around probably, was it 86, I believe. And so, that's what we're looking at for it. I think it's 86, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, one thing you're seeing more than ever in this market is complete devastation. I told you, every time I pull up PayPal, it's a new 52-week low. This right here is, some people call it a falling knife, a waterfall, whatever you want to call it. This is ocean water right there. That's water. Just keeps falling, right? Just keeps falling. Where's the bottom? I'll say this, for people that keep DCAing in, I'm hoping for the people that keep doing that, it's not down right there on that tree branch. That tree branch is a long way down from here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that would be 38, 39. Yeah, so let's say 40, right? So that would be brutal. Enphase, another one, complete devastation. Earnings dropped like, was it 15, 20%? And this one right here, look at this, down 76% in less than a year. Ugh, that's just painful to see, man. And you can see it can fall farther. Really, it better stop, what is that, 75, I'm not mistaken? It needs to stop at that line right there. And so I believe that's 75. If not, this thing can go all the way down to like 60. If you've been DCing in either one of those two, let us know in the comments and stuff. And what do you think the bottom is going to be? Because Square is the same way. Square has a bigger problem though, is because, like I showed you, once they diverted from BTC, it was over for them, and they've been dropping ever since. They've dropped huge today. And so yeah, and maybe it is just a fintech thing all the way around for them. And then of course Enphase solar. So the solar industry, my understanding is you got to borrow a lot of money, and high rates are not good for your environment, and demand is down. And so they're warning of that. So it definitely makes sense, and especially with solar, because you can only put it in certain areas anyway. But yeah, I've looked through so many charts, and they look just like that. Whether it's ARK, any of the ARK stocks, they're all like that. And so, yeah, it's an interesting time to say the least, and charts you'll never forget. And that whole, I forgot the name of that graph, which shows, all this stuff and the fear and people denial and all this stuff. And that just literally has played out. Like you've seen it. It's a real thing. That's why that chart actually exists, And so, again, tomorrow I'll be answering all your questions. I'll go into more into NVIDIA, the bond market, thing like that. And you guys have some great questions, by the way. Some I'll definitely need your help with. And I learned a lot by doing that video myself. And then Sunday, we'll go more into the individual stocks to kind of set up for the week. You know, look at what we're looking at, especially the economic data is going to be huge next week with FOMC, Treasury bond issuance is going to be announced, all this stuff. So it's going to be a big, big week. And, you know, just I always say this is one of those times, like I said, I guess, what was it, August, September, and I kept saying it. Have your cash on hand, have your list of stocks you want. If you think they're going to hit certain numbers, because they're probably going to hit them, right? And just be patient. That's really the key thing. And so you just want to see a bullish market structure start to form on the shorter term time frames, maybe before you jump in front of the bus there. But again, you know, it's up to you guys. So let me know how you made out today. And I'll end up seeing you tomorrow. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you don't mind. I certainly appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow.